Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm very excited to share with all of you my first ever Chanel purchase. So I've always been really interested in Chanel makeup products, but I've always found them to be a little bit pricey and intimidating. It's not really a brand that I have a ton of knowledge about, but recently Chanel reformulated their really famous blushes, and for a long time I had been hearing rave reviews of Chanel blushes. And so when I heard that they did this reformulation and I watched the reviews where folks were really upset about the new formula, I felt a lot of FOMO and really wanted to try out the original formula. So I went onto Chanel's website and it looks like they mostly have replaced all of their blushes with the new formula, but they do have 2 shades available in the original formula and it's exclusive to the Chanel website. So I picked up one of the shades, Alezane, and so today I'm very excited to share with all of you my unboxing, swatches, and try-on of this blush. So let's see what all the hype is around Chanel blushes. So first off, I wanted to share with all of you my unboxing because if you order from Chanel's website, they actually send you a really nicely packaged box. Wow, so classy. They even put your receipt in this nice black envelope with this Chanel embossment on top. And the product itself comes in this really beautiful black and white Chanel box. So let's just take this off. And then they do a beautiful job of packaging it in Chanel tissue paper with this nice seal over here. So I've carefully taken off that seal. And then here is the blush packaging itself. Wow, okay, so there's this little dust bag over here, which, oh, I think this has like a free sample or something in it. And then over here is the Joues Contraste blush in the shade Alezane. And then there's all this confetti paper left over. I honestly, from an environmental perspective, feel a little bit bad about all of this packaging just for one blush. But if you do want a really luxury experience and you're going to buy Chanel products, definitely buying from their website will give you that full Chanel experience. And here is the box for the blush, which has a really nice burgundy trim to it. And as I mentioned, this is in the shade 260 Alezane. The other shade is, I think, Rose Profonde, which is more of a berry pink. I picked this one because it's a little bit more of a neutral coppery rose shade. And then inside of the box, the blush comes in this little velvet pouch. And here is the blush itself. Oh wow, this is really pretty. And I love how the Chanel emblem here is in that burgundy shade. So I guess that's to reflect that this is more of a limited edition collection. And then on the back you have the shade name and a little emblem with the color. So this is my first Chanel makeup product, and I will say, even though the packaging looks extremely simple and it's not actually that heavy, it definitely has a certain luxurious feeling to it. So this is a button snap enclosure, so you need to press this button here in order to release the lid. So here we have the beautiful blush Alezane along with the little brush that it comes with. And I hope you guys can see from this angle that it's actually a domed shape. And it might be a little bit difficult to see in the video, but this definitely has a pretty strong shimmer to it. Wow, I'm super excited about this blush. It looks so beautiful and so perfect for an everyday look. I'm a sucker for shimmery, coppery, rosy tone blushes, so I feel like this is gonna be right up my lane. And here is a finger swatch of the blush. And here is an arm swatch. And the shade description from Temptalia is that Alezane is a muted coppery brown with a hint of rose and gold shimmer. So the texture of this blush is quite unique in that it has a very silky, powdery texture to it. So at first I thought because it's a bit of a baked formula, it would be a bit more hard pressed. But I found in the swatch, it was really easy to pick up on the finger, and it was really easy to build up the swatch to opacity. The texture of the powder is really soft and silky, so it definitely gives you that luxurious feel. I do want to mention though that this blush does have a fairly strong fragrance to it, so you won't smell it if you say hold the blush out at a normal distance, but if you do sort of put your nose closer to the blush, then you can definitely smell that there's quite a significant amount of perfume in it. It's a bit of a sweet floral scent. I personally don't mind it since I do think it smells pretty luxurious, but I did want to mention that in case you really don't like fragrances in your makeup products. So without further ado, let's go ahead and try this out on my face. So today I just have on my Pat McGrath concealer and my M Cosmetics Daydream cushion, and I haven't set my face with any powder. So I have here my Sonia G Cheek Pro, and I'm just going to lightly tap into this product and just sweep it all over my cheek. Ooh, I would say even just with that light tap, you get a really pretty amount of pigmentation. Like, this is a really nice sort of subtle blush look. Of course, I'm gonna build it up today because I want you guys to really be able to see the shade. So I would say that this is blending out very easily and very nicely. I'm not seeing any patchiness or catching on my texture. There are, however, little shimmery particles in this, like little micro glitters. I'm not sure if my camera will be able to pick it up, but I am noticing that if I look pretty close up, I can see the individual sort of gold particles all over my cheeks. So here we have the blush all over my right cheek, and I would say I'm a huge fan of this shade. It's really gorgeous, and I think just a perfect everyday shade for me personally. The formula was super easy to work with and build out. I had no issues with blending. There's no patchiness, but I do find the shimmer just a little bit off-putting. If you guys have tried the original Chanel formula, definitely let me know down below if you guys have noticed this glittery effect, because I am operating off of the assumption that this is the OG formula that everyone has been raving about. But I don't know, I'm kind of surprised with this glitter because that's just not something I would normally associate with such a luxury blush product. So for my other cheek, I actually want to test this out on top of some powder just to see if the application experience is any different. So I have here my Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush face powder inside my Look in a palette. So I'm taking my Refer number 5 brush and just taking a little bit of that and putting it all over this side of my face, just to see if there's any difference. So I put a pretty light dusting down, so now I'm gonna go back in with this blush and again just slowly build it up on this side of the face. Okay, based on that initial tap, I will say I think with the powder down, the layers are definitely a little bit sheer. The blush is not necessarily sticking as much. So I do feel like I'm needing to add more layers on this side with the powder compared to the other side. Also, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I do feel like this side in general is looking a little bit more matte compared to this side. So the blush is maybe just kind of blending in a little bit with the powder, and that's taking down some of the sheen. I can still see though the micro glitter on this side, so I can still see those individual golden particles. So it's more so that the sheen in the base pigment is getting toned down, but the micro glitters are still visible. All right, going in with maybe my third or fourth layer now. Alrighty, so here is the completed powder look. And just as a reminder, this is what it looks like with powder. This is what it looks like without powder underneath. And I would say that on both sides, it applied really well. I would say on this side with the powder, it does look slightly more blended in comparison to the no powder side. Also, the no powder side definitely has a lot more sheen in comparison to the powder side. If you do have lighter skin than me and you want to have a really sheer blush application, I would recommend trying it with the powder because I find that this does lead to a more seamless application and a less pigmented finish. So now before going into my initial thoughts and impressions about this blush, if you guys have watched my previous blush videos, you know that I love trying out the blush products on my eyes as well, because I think that gives you guys a better impression of what the shade actually looks like, and also is a good test in case you want to do a really monochromatic look where your eyes and your cheeks match. So I've put some eye primer down on my left eye, but let's first go in on my right eye without any primer just to see how this blush performs as an eyeshadow. So I have here my blend brush from the Chikuhodo Z line. So I'm just gonna sweep that all over this blush and then go into the crease area of this unprimed lid. And generally in my experience, blush does perform a lot better with some primer if you're using it as an eyeshadow, but I do like just testing it both ways in case you guys prefer not to use primer. Alrighty, so overall I think this is blending in actually quite easily, though again with the shimmer particles I feel like that is not ideal for the crease area. Now going in with my Chikuhodo eyeshadow brush, I'm just going to use this to apply more pigment to my mobile eyelid. This is a very pretty one and done shade, even if the glitter in the crease is a little bit jarring. And then I'm going to take the tip of this and run this underneath my lash line. So here is the blush on an unprimed lid. And overall, it blended out pretty seamlessly. I think the blush is sheer enough such that you don't necessarily have to use primer in order to have an even application. So now let's try this out on the primed eyelid and see if there's any difference. So going back in with my blend brush. Alrighty, so already I do feel like it is performing a little bit better on top of the primer in terms of shearing out and having a really nice layer. I feel like the glitter particles are also a little bit more evenly distributed on this primed side. Okay, that was definitely much faster on the side with primer. So now let me go in with the eyeshadow brush and also sweep that across the lid. And again, also sweep some of that under the lash line as well. Alrighty, so here's the blush on both sides, and similar to a lot of my other reviews where I've tried blush as eyeshadow, I think this works way better on the side with primer. So especially in the crease area, it blended out just much more smoothly and provided a really nice fade in the outer corners. Also, I don't know if you guys will really be able to see, but on this side without the primer, the glitter particles are kind of bunched up in different places, whereas on this side, I feel like the glitter is much more evenly distributed, and so it just has a much more perfected look. So now I'm gonna go off, put on some eyeliner, and be back with some comparison swatches. So here we are with some comparison swatches with the rest of my blush collection. So over here is Alezane from Chanel. And then the first swatch I have is from the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Intense Cheek to Chic. And this has both the inner and outer rings mixed together. And I would say the Charlotte is just a little bit deeper and more coppery in comparison to the Chanel. And also it doesn't have those micro glitters. The next shade over here is actually the pop shade, so the inner part of this Cheek to Chic. And these two shades are actually fairly similar, with the Chanel shade just being a little bit deeper, having a little bit more of almost a berry undertone to it in comparison to the pop shade, which has a little bit more copper. The next swatch over here is this pop shade from the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in a Palette Glowing Beauty. And the pop shade is definitely much more pink and almost slightly fuchsia in comparison to the Chanel blush. Next up, we have my 3M Cosmetics blushes. So this swatch over here is Venetian Rose, which has a slightly cooler undertone and is a bit more rose in tone in comparison to Alezane, which has more of a brownish undertone. Then we have Magic Hour over here, which is much lighter than Alezane and comes across more as pinky peach rather than coppery rose. And then we have Faded Clementine, which is also lighter and much more tangerine in comparison to copper. Then we have two of my Pat McGrath Divine blushes. So first we have Nude Venus, which is much more pink in tone and also less shimmery. Then we have Desert Orchid, which is a bit lighter and also has slightly more of a bright coral undertone to it in comparison to the brown undertone of Alezane. And then for the last swatch, I have Mandalay Bay from my NARS Orgasm on the Beach palette. So that's swatched over here, and this is actually one of the most similar shade matches in my collection, but the finish is very different. So this is a satin finish, whereas Alezane is a shimmery, glittery finish. So overall, I don't have any dupes in my collection, and I've actually really been loving recently this Mandalay Bay shade from the NARS palette, and so I'm excited that this is actually quite similar in shade to Alezane, because that implies that Alezane is really going to be one of my perfect everyday shades. So now for my overall initial impressions and thoughts about this blush. So I would say on the whole, I'm a fan of this blush and glad that I picked it up for my collection before they get rid of the old formula formula entirely. This shade is really my perfect everyday blush shade, so I think I'll get a lot of use out of this blush. As you guys could probably tell from the swatch comparisons, I really like blushes in this general family of kind of coppery rose, slightly more nude undertone blushes. I would say that the compact this blush comes in is really beautiful, and I love the domed surface of the blush itself because it really gives you that luxurious Chanel experience. The blush is also extremely silky and buildable on the cheeks, so I think if you're lighter than me in skin tone, you'll have no trouble using this blush. I do think this will probably tap out around the medium deep side of the skin tone spectrum, just because if you have really deep skin, I'm not sure if this is going to show up super well. But on my skin tone, I think it gives a really beautiful everyday flush that is very wearable and that will go with really a wide variety of different types of looks. I would say the only thing I'm not a fan of with regards to this blush is the glitter particles in it. So I don't know why Chanel felt a need to put some fairly large micro glitter particles into this blush, because it's the one blush in basically my entire collection where even after I've sort of buffed the blush into my skin, I can still see individual glittery particles. So it's not that big of a deal if you're looking at someone a little bit further away. From a distance, I think this blush just comes across as having a really beautiful, healthy sheen on the skin. But if you do get close up, both on the eyes and on the cheeks, you can see these individual pinpoints of light. And so I'm personally not a huge fan of that aspect. It is slightly disappointing for me because that's something I associate with lower quality blushes. And especially for Chanel, I would expect a much more seamless finish. I would say, especially if you have more mature skin or a lot of texture on your cheeks, the glitter particles in this type of formula are probably not going to be the most flattering. So I would caution you against this blush in that sense. I'm not sure if the Rose Profonde shade has the same issue. Based on the pictures, that looks like it might be slightly more of a satin finish and not have sort of gold glitter in it. So of course, I have not tried that blush, but that might be worth checking out if, like me, you want to try out the old Chanel formula, but you're not a huge fan of how this one has a lot of those glitter particles. Overall though, I'm very excited to have finally tried my first Chanel makeup product. I've always been really interested in Chanel as a line, and I've always been watching their latest releases. I don't think Chanel will become like Pat McGrath to me in terms of being a brand that I collect everything from, but hopefully this is the first step for me building out a small Chanel collection. If you guys are major Chanel aficionados, I would love to know down below what your thoughts are in terms of your favorite Chanel products. Also, if any of you have tried both the old and new formulas of the blushes, please let me know what your thoughts are below. So that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for joining me, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!